It all started on a blazing afternoon in Lagos, when the entire city whispered the same name, Adewale. He wasn't just another businessman. He was the billionaire everyone either feared or envied. His empire, Adewale Holdings, stretched across West Africa like a golden web of power and money. But behind those mansion gates, something far more personal was unfolding, something no amount of wealth could fix. Mr. Adewale had everything except peace of mind. His only son, Ethan, had just returned from London after finishing medical school. The young man had it all: intelligence, charm, and a smile that could melt hearts. Women lined up for a chance to meet him, but Ethan had seen too many fake smiles, too many people chasing his father's money. What he wanted was real love, a woman who would love him when the cars were gone and the lights were off. That evening, the family's mansion shimmered under the sunset as Mr. Adewale poured himself a drink and called his son into the study. "Ethan," he said in his deep and commanding voice, "it's time for you to settle down. I've already seen two women who could be perfect for you. Grace Humble, a kind and devoted, and Vanessa Beautiful, a confident but ambitious." Ethan laughed softly, unaware that this single conversation would change his life forever. Outside, the golden city kept glowing, unaware that soon the heir of Adewale Holdings would trade his silk suits for a dusty uniform, and that love itself was about to be tested in the most unexpected way. That night, sleep refused to come to Ethan. He sat by the wide window of his father's mansion, staring at the glowing skyline of Lagos. The streets below were alive with noise and music, but inside his chest, there was only silence. Everyone around him had already decided what his future should look like. Wealth, comfort, powerful last name. But Ethan felt trapped in a golden cage. He remembered his father's words about the two women, Grace and Vanessa, and wondered which of them would even look at him if he wasn't Ethan Adewale, heir to $1 billion empire. A strange thought crept into his mind. Quiet at first, then louder, bolder. What if they didn't know who I was? He leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing. What if I stripped away the name, the cars, the designer suits? Would anyone still see me? Would anyone still care? The idea felt reckless, even ridiculous. Yet the more he thought about it, the more his heart began to race. For the first time in years, Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in London's polished halls or at the mansion's fancy dinner's freedom. The next morning, he walked into his father's study, determination in his eyes. Mr. Adewale looked up from his newspaper, surprised. "Ethan, you're up early," he said, sipping his coffee. "Father, I need to tell you something." Ethan replied, "I've made a decision." Mr. Adewale set the cup down, his face tightening. "What kind of decision?" Ethan took a deep breath. "I don't want to meet those women as your son. I want to see them as me. I want to work at the company, live simply, and let them think I'm just a regular employee, maybe even a security guard." For a long moment, there was silence. Then Mr. Adewale laughed softly, shaking his head. "You can't be serious." "Ethan, my own son guarding the company gates?" Ethan's voice didn't waver. "That's exactly what I want. I want to know who would love me if I had nothing." The old man leaned back, his eyes filled with something between pride and nostalgia. "You sound just like your mother," he said quietly. "She believed love should be proven, not promised." "Then let me prove it," Ethan said. A slow smile crept across Mr. Adewale's face. "All right, you'll have your chance. But once you start, you must see it through. No one should know the truth, not even Grace or Vanessa." "Understood," Ethan replied. By dawn the next day, the transformation began. The young man who once wore Italian suits and gold watches now stood in front of the mirror wearing a faded blue uniform. His once polished shoes were replaced by scuffed boots, his sleek haircut hidden beneath a cap. The reflection staring back at him looked nothing like the billionaire's son. For a brief moment, he doubted himself. Could he really pull this off? But then he remembered the loneliness that came with privilege, the empty smiles, the people who praised him for what he had, not who he was. He tightened the cap and whispered to his reflection, "Let's see who's real." At sunrise, Ethan arrived at the headquarters of Adewale Holdings. The guards at the main gate barely looked up as he signed his name in the new staff logbook. "New recruit?" one of them muttered. "They're short a man at the west gate." He nodded quietly and took his post by the giant glass entrance. The city buzzed behind him, cars gliding by, executives walking past in crisp suits. None of them gave him a second glance. For the first time in his life, Ethan was invisible, and strangely, it felt right. Hours passed. The sun climbed high. Then a soft voice broke through the noise. "Good morning. Security." He turned. Grace was walking into the building, her smile gentle and genuine. Ethan felt something stir in his chest. "Good morning, ma'am," he said quietly. Moments later, Vanessa swept through the same door in her high heels, sunglasses glinting. She didn't even glance his way. The faint scent of her perfume lingered as she passed, leaving nothing but cold air behind. Ethan smiled to himself, a spark of amusement lighting his eyes. So, it begins. From the top floor, unseen behind tinted glass, Mr. Adewale watched everything. A faint grin appeared on his face as he whispered, "Now, my son, let's see what love truly looks like." Outside, Ethan adjusted his uniform, lifted his chin, and faced the endless stream of people rushing through the gates. Somewhere among them, his truth waited to be revealed, and somewhere deep inside, the game of hearts had just begun. From his post at the gate of Adewale Holdings, Ethan began to see the company in a way he never had before. No more private offices, no personal assistant handing him reports, no chauffeur waiting with the engine running. Now, he was part of the world that everyone else looked past. The world of security guards, cleaners, delivery drivers, and staff who carried the weight of the empire quietly, unseen, every morning. The sun painted the city gold before burning away the mist. And that was when Grace would arrive. She was never late, never loud, never proud. Her hair was always tied neatly, her clothes simple but clean. She smiled at everyone she met, even the janitors, even the new security guard standing by the gate. "Good morning, sir," she would say softly, clutching her file of documents. Ethan, keeping his disguise, would nod and reply, "Good morning, ma'am. Have a good day." At first, it seemed ordinary, but each greeting from her carried a warmth that didn't feel rehearsed. It was genuine, like sunshine touching cold marble. One morning, she noticed sweat on his forehead and walked back from the cafeteria holding a bottle of cold water. "It's really hot today. You should stay hydrated," she said. Ethan froze for a second. Nobody had ever spoken to him that way when he was just a worker. He smiled, took the bottle, and whispered, "Thank you, Grace." She smiled, unaware that the man she was talking to was the heir of the company. Then came Vanessa. If Grace was a morning breeze, Vanessa was a thunderstorm dressed in heels. Every entrance she made was loud. Her perfume arrived 5 seconds before she did. Her heels clicked sharply against the marble floor, as if the building itself should listen. She wore red lipstick, diamond earrings, and confidence that often crossed into arrogance. Ethan saw her every day, and not once did she return his greeting. She walked past him as though he were invisible. Once, he held the door open for her. She stopped, looked him up and down, and smirked. "You don't have to do that," she said coldly. "That's your job, isn't it?" Then she brushed past him, leaving behind a faint scent of luxury and disdain. Later that day, in the staff cafeteria, her voice filled the room. "You know, Mr. Adewale already spoke to me. It's only a matter of time before I become part of the family, she said, her smile wide, her tone dripping with pride. A few of her coworkers gasped. Others exchanged glances. Vanessa leaned back in her chair, tossing her hair. Some of you better learn to respect me now, because soon I'll be your boss's daughter-in-law. Laughter echoed, half amused, half nervous. Grace, sitting quietly at a nearby table, looked up from her lunch, frowned slightly, then returned to her food. She had heard those words before, but today they sounded more dangerous than funny. That evening, as the last of the cars rolled out of the parking lot, Ethan stood by the gate, broom in hand, sweeping away leaves. The city lights flickered to life beyond the fence, glowing against the dusk. Grace passed by, smiled again, and waved before getting into a taxi. Ethan waved back. Minutes later, Vanessa came strutting out of the building, still talking on her phone. Yes, I'll see you at the salon tomorrow. I can't look ordinary when I'm about to meet the Adewales again. Her laughter trailed off as she entered her sleek black car. The driver opened the door. She didn't even glance at Ethan. He leaned on his broom, watching the taillights disappear into the Lagos traffic. For the first time since he began his disguise, he felt the clear contrast between two hearts. One was kind without reason, the other, proud without cause. As night settled over the compound, Ethan looked up at the giant Adewale Holdings sign glowing against the sky. The irony wasn't lost on him. Somewhere behind those glass walls, the women his father had chosen were showing him who they truly were, without even knowing he was watching. He smiled faintly to himself, a quiet spark of amusement in his eyes. So, that's who you both are, he whispered. The test has only just begun. And somewhere far above, in the quiet study of his mansion, Mr. Adewale watched the CCTV feed with a knowing smile, whispering to himself, "Let the truth reveal itself." The game of hearts had only started, but Ethan could already feel which one was moving in rhythm with his own. The next few weeks turned the halls of Adewale Holdings into Vanessa's personal runway. She began walking through the office like a queen inspecting her servants. Every click of her heels echoed authority that no one had given her. Her voice carried through the corridors, loud and commanding, as if every wall should remember her name. She demanded fresh coffee every morning from the interns, scolded the cleaners for walking too slowly, and often stopped by Grace's desk just to throw subtle insults disguised as compliments. "You look nice today, Grace," she would say, pausing just long enough to add, "That blouse almost looks expensive." Grace would simply smile and continue working, refusing to feed Vanessa's pride. But Vanessa's arrogance didn't stop there. She started treating the entire building as if it already belonged to her future husband. During meetings, she would cross her legs, adjust her hair, and smile knowingly whenever Mr. Adewale's name was mentioned. "Soon," she whispered to a colleague one day, "this company will be mine too." The staff had learned to stay silent when she entered the room. Her perfume arrived first, followed by her smirk. Even the managers avoided confrontation. Only one person didn't seem affected by her theatrics, the quiet, observant security guard at the gate. That morning, Ethan stood at his post, as usual, greeting employees with his calm voice. When Vanessa arrived, her car stopped in front of the entrance. He opened the door and said politely, "Good morning, Mama. Aim." Her eyes darted toward him like cold steel. "Did I ask you to talk to me?" she snapped. Ethan blinked. "No, ma'am. I was only being polite." "Polite?" she repeated, stepping closer. "You think I need your pity? Who do you think you are? Just because you stand near this gate doesn't mean you're part of this company. You're here to open doors, not to start conversations." The other guards froze, pretending not to hear. A few staff members standing nearby turned away, afraid to intervene. Ethan kept his composure. His voice stayed calm, but his words hit deep. "Respect costs nothing, ma'am. Sometimes the way we treat people who can do nothing for us shows who we really are." Vanessa's jaw tightened. What did you just say? He met her gaze, steady and unflinching. You heard me. Her face flushed with anger. How dare you talk back to me? You're finished in this company. I'll make sure of it. She turned sharply, storming into the building, her heels striking the floor like gunshots. Inside, she went straight to the executive floor. Without knocking, she pushed open the heavy wooden doors of Mr. Adewale's office. He looked up, startled but calm. Sir, you need to fire that guard immediately, she declared, her voice trembling with fury. Mr. Adewale set his pen down. Which guard? The rude one at the front gate. He insulted me, disrespected me, and said I lack manners, she said dramatically, crossing her arms. Mr. Adewale leaned back slightly. That doesn't sound like something he would say. Are you sure? Yes, I'm sure, she shouted. He was mocking me right in front of everyone. For a long moment, the room was silent except for the ticking of the clock. Then Mr. Adewale spoke quietly. Vanessa, I've known that young man for a while. He's polite, disciplined, and honest. If he spoke up, there must be a reason. Vanessa blinked in disbelief. Sir, are you defending a security guard over me? I'm defending fairness, he replied simply. I'll talk to him myself, but I will not fire a man without knowing the full story. Her lips trembled with frustration. So you'll take his side? I'll take the side of truth, he said calmly. Vanessa stood frozen, unable to respond. For the first time, her confidence cracked. She forced a tight smile and muttered, As you wish, sir. Then she turned and left the office, her mind spinning. As she walked down the hallway, her heels clicking angrily against the floor. Thoughts raced through her head. Why would Mr. Adewale defend a guard so strongly? Who is he really? Outside, Ethan remained at his post, sweeping leaves near the main gate. He looked up briefly toward the top floor where his father's office stood, then smiled faintly. He knew exactly what was happening. The test was unfolding perfectly. He whispered to himself, Sometimes pride reveals more truth than words ever could. From the mansion, miles away, Mr. Adewale's phone buzzed. It was a notification from the security camera feed. He watched the footage silently, eyes glinting with quiet satisfaction. Everything was going according to plan. The storm had begun, and soon the mass would start to fall. The morning the announcement came, Adewale Holdings felt different. There was a strange buzz in the air, a mix of curiosity and anticipation. Staff whispered in hallways, printers clicked faster than usual, and even the guards seemed more alert. A message had been sent from the executive office early that morning. All employees must report to the conference hall at 9 a.m. sharp. Mr. Adewale has an important announcement. By the time the clock struck 9, every seat in the wide glass-walled hall was filled. The air conditioners hummed quietly, but tension ran hot through the crowd. Then the doors opened, and Mr. Adewale entered with his usual calm grace, dressed in his white suit, holding his walking stick like a symbol of authority. Everyone rose. Good morning, my children, he greeted, his deep voice echoing. Please, sit. When silence settled, he looked around the room with eyes that carried both pride and fatigue. For 30 years, I have built this company with hard work, prayer, and faith. But even the strongest tree must one day rest its roots. From today, I am stepping back to spend more time with my family. Gasps rippled across the room. Mr. Adewale smiled faintly. Do not be afraid. This is not the end. I am leaving you in good hands. Until my son completes his final work abroad, I have appointed a representative who will oversee daily operations on my behalf, a man I trust completely. The room erupted with whispers. Who was it? A senior manager? A business partner? Then the doors opened again. A tall, confident man entered wearing a tailored suit, his face calm but unreadable. He carried no papers. No assistant followed him. He simply walked to the front, shook Mr. Adiwale's hand, and turned to face the crowd. "Good morning, everyone," he said smoothly. "My name is Mr. Tunde. I will be working closely with all departments to ensure that Adiwale Holdings continues to grow in excellence. I believe in respect, discipline, and teamwork. Together, we will keep the chairman's vision alive." The employees applauded politely, but curiosity shimmered in their eyes. Vanessa, sitting in the front row, couldn't take her eyes off him. His posture, his voice, the quiet power in his presence, everything about him screamed confidence. As the meeting ended, Grace quietly returned to her desk, already thinking about the next report deadline. She wasn't curious. For her, it didn't matter who sat in the big office upstairs. Work was work. She had tasks to finish, people to help, and clients to serve. Vanessa, however, had other plans. That afternoon, she walked into the restroom, fixed her lipstick, and smiled at her reflection. "A new king has arrived," she whispered, "and every king deserves a queen." She spent the next few days carefully plotting her approach. She learned his schedule, discovered which elevator he used, even memorized the way he liked his coffee. The next morning, she appeared outside his office holding a steaming cup. "Good morning, sir," she said sweetly. "I noticed you hadn't had your coffee yet." Mr. Tunde looked up, surprised but polite. "Thank you, Miss Vanessa," she said, leaning slightly forward. "Just Vanessa." He smiled faintly. "Thank you, Vanessa. That's thoughtful of you." She left, heart racing, convinced she had made her first impression. By lunch, she was already telling her friends in the cafeteria that the new director had noticed her charm. Meanwhile, Ethan observed everything from his station at the gate. The disguise had become his second skin. He swept, saluted, and watched quietly as the drama unfolded inside. When Vanessa walked past one afternoon, her perfume clouding the air, he caught the faint glint in her eyes, the same glint she had once reserved for his father's approval. "So now the wind has changed," he murmured softly, "and she's already chasing it." Later that evening, Grace came by carrying a folder. She paused at the gate, smiling. "You look tired. Ethan, have you eaten today?" He shook his head, smiling. "Not yet." She handed him a small lunchbox. "It's jollof rice. I made too much this morning." He accepted it quietly, warmth flooding through him more than the food ever could. "Thank you, Grace. You didn't have to." "I know," she said, but I wanted to." Then she walked away, her steps light, her kindness effortless. As Ethan watched her go, he realized something that no disguise could hide. The difference between Grace and Vanessa was not just attitude, it was soul. One sought attention, the other gave compassion, and deep down, Ethan knew which one his heart had already chosen. But as the sun set behind the skyscrapers, he also knew the story was far from over. A new player had entered the board, and with him, the game was about to change forever. The days slipped quietly into weeks, and with every sunrise, Ethan found himself waiting, not for wealth, not for recognition, but for the gentle sound of Grace's footsteps approaching the gate. Her presence had become the only part of his disguise that felt real. Every morning she arrived with the same kind smile, her neatly folded files pressed against her chest, her voice soft but confident. Sometimes she would bring him tea, sometimes she would simply stop for a brief hello before heading inside. And each time she did, Ethan felt his heart tighten with something he had never experienced in all his years, surrounded by luxury. It wasn't attraction alone, it was peace. One afternoon, after the last group of employees had left, the sun hung low over Lagos, casting long golden lines across the compound. The hum of the city faded behind the tall gates. Grace walked out of the building, holding her purse, ready to head home. Ethan stood by the entrance, a broom in hand, pretending to finish his sweep, though his heart beat louder than the passing traffic. "Grace," he called softly. She turned, smiling as always. "Ethan, you're still here?" He nodded, unsure how to begin. "I needed to tell you something. Can we talk for a minute?" She hesitated for a second, then stepped closer. The light fell gently on her face, making her eyes glow like melted honey. Ethan took a deep breath. "I know this might sound strange," he began. "You've been kind to me since the first day we met. No one else ever saw me the way you do. You talk to me, you respect me, and you never treated me like I was invisible. I can't pretend anymore." Grace looked puzzled. "Pretend?" Ethan's voice dropped to a whisper. "Grace, I like you. No, I love you." The words hung between them, trembling like fragile glass. Grace froze. For a few seconds, she didn't speak. Ethan's chest tightened. Maybe he had made a mistake. Maybe she would laugh. But then, slowly, a shy smile appeared on her face. "You love me?" she asked softly. Ethan nodded and, unable to look away. Her eyes softened. "I like you, too, Ethan." He blinked, surprised. "You do?" She nodded again, her smile widening. "From the first day you greeted me, I thought you were different. You're humble, gentle, and real. I just didn't know if you'd ever notice me." A breeze rustled the nearby trees. Ethan exhaled, feeling years of loneliness melt away in that single moment. "You have no idea how happy I am to hear that," he said, his voice trembling, but Grace stepped closer and added quietly, "There's something I have to say, too. People here talk too much. If they find out we're close, it could cost us our jobs. You're a security guard. I'm just a junior staff member. They won't understand." Ethan nodded slowly. "I know, but I don't care about this job if it means losing something real." She smiled, her tone soft but certain. "No, Ethan, you must care. We'll keep this between us, at least for now. Love is not about showing it to the world. It's about keeping it safe." He looked into her eyes and saw the sincerity there. Without thinking, he reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. Their fingers intertwined naturally, as if they had been meant to find each other all along. "Then it's our secret," he whispered. She nodded. "Our little secret." From that day forward, the walls of Ottawale Holdings became witnesses to a love that bloomed in silence. Amid the rush of cars, the noise of meetings, and the polished floors of luxury, two souls began to find comfort in stolen glances. When Grace passed by the gate each morning, she would say, "Good morning, Ethan." And he would reply, "Have a beautiful day, Grace." Their voices carried no romance in public, but their eyes told stories that words could not. During lunch breaks, they sometimes met behind the back garden where no cameras reached. They talked about their dreams, their families, their fears. Grace spoke about wanting a small home by the water someday, filled with laughter and peace. Ethan listened, his heart swelling with the knowledge that one day he could give her more than she ever imagined. At night, he lay awake thinking of her smile, her kindness, her courage to love him even when she believed he had nothing to offer. And in the quiet of his small room behind the compound, Ethan finally whispered to himself, "This is what I was searching for all along. Not fame, not fortune, but a love that doesn't see the uniform." Outside, the city lights shimmered like stars, and somewhere within those glowing towers, the son of a billionaire and a humble young woman had found something far more valuable than gold. Their story was still a secret, but their hearts had already begun to speak louder than words ever could. Jealousy had been quietly burning inside Vanessa, but now it flared like wildfire. The way Grace smiled each morning, the way that poor security guard looked at her, it all made Vanessa's blood boil. She needed to know the truth, and she needed proof. One evening, Vanessa slipped a few bills into the hand of a cleaner named Amaka and whispered, "Follow them. Watch every move they make. The next day, Amaka returned, wide-eyed. Madam, I saw them behind the building after work. They were holding hands and kissing. Vanessa froze, then smiled coldly. So, the little saint has been hiding secrets. The following morning, she stormed into the HR room where Grace was arranging files. You think you're smart, don't you? Falling in love with a guard. I'll tell the chairman everything. You'll be out of here before you can blink. Grace looked up, calm and unshaken. And what will you say when I tell him about you and Mr. Tunde? Vanessa's face turned pale. What? I've seen you leaving his office late at night, Grace said softly. So go ahead, report me. But I'll tell the truth, too. The room fell silent. Then, in one smooth motion, Grace took out her phone and dialed. Good afternoon, sir, she said. I just wanted to inform you that I'm no longer interested in your son. I found someone else. Someone named Ethan. I hope you understand. There was a pause. Then Mr. Edewale's calm voice replied, I understand. My dear, please come to my home this weekend and bring Vanessa with you. Grace ended the call, her eyes steady. Vanessa's mask of confidence began to crack. For the first time, she realized the storm she started might swallow her whole. Saturday afternoon arrived, warm and golden, as the gates of the Adewale mansion opened. Grace stepped out of the taxi, dressed simply in a light blue dress. Her calm gracefulness caught the attention of every servant who passed. Inside the grand hall, Mr. Edewale stood waiting with a kind smile. My daughter, welcome, he said warmly. Grace bowed politely. Thank you, sir. Then the door behind her opened again. A tall, confident man walked in. His white shirt was crisp, his gold wristwatch glimmered, and his smile carried a quiet strength. Grace turned, her eyes widening in disbelief. Ethan? She whispered. He nodded, eyes soft. Yes, Grace, it's me. Her lips trembled. You're the chairman's son? Mr. Edewale stepped forward, smiling proudly. You loved him when you thought he had nothing. That is why today you stand before my true son, Dr. Ethan Edewale. Tears filled Grace's eyes. I didn't know. That's why it matters? Ethan said gently. You saw my heart, not my name. Just then, loud footsteps echoed across the marble floor. The doors flew open and Vanessa appeared, wrapped in red silk, her perfume filling the room. She smiled confidently until her eyes landed on Ethan. What is this guard doing here? Why is he sitting with you, sir? She demanded. Mr. Edewale said nothing. Ethan stood, his calm unshaken. You wanted to meet the chairman's son, didn't you? Vanessa frowned. Yes. Where is he? Ethan's voice was quiet but firm. You're looking at him. The color drained from her face. That can't be. Mr. Edewale's tone hardened. You failed. Vanessa, you saw only status and ignored the soul. Vanessa fell to her knees, crying. Please forgive me. But the old man turned away. True love doesn't beg for power. It earns it through kindness.